So with the Terminids being the center of attention lately in Helldivers 2, I figured I'd make a video going over some of my favorite loadouts as of late to help trim down the numbers of this infestation. Super Earth is finally sending us into the gloom, there's new enemy types and new threats around every corner, and I've been given special orders directly from Super Earth Command to test out the optimal loadout combinations for dealing with these overgrown bugs. And after all my testing, I've been tasked with sharing the results of my research with you fellow Helldivers. So for my testing, I solo dove on Helldive 10 on the new gloom-infested city maps, and I found success with each of the following loadouts. Now, I by no means am claiming that these are the best loadouts against the Terminids. There's like a million different combinations you can try. I'm just giving some suggestions for those of you that might need some inspiration. And I tried to keep each of these loadouts a little bit different from each other to give you all some variety. And with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So for the first build in today's video, we're going with a gunner build, and the focus is either going to be using the stalwart or the machine gun. Now, I tried using both and I had success with both, but for this video, I'm going to focus on bringing the stalwart. Now, firstly, for armor, I went with light armor, and I went with the siege-ready armor passive from the Urban Legends War Bond. This is so that we have more ammo and faster reloads for our primary, and this will give us an extra magazine for the stalwart. And with it being light armor, I can outrun most of the enemies and constantly stay on the move to easily take out objectives quickly. For my primary weapon, I chose the crossbow. This is because it's one-handed, so I can shoot it easily on the run, it can close bug holes, and it has great crowd control. So anytime there's a big group of enemies, I can just shoot a couple into the crowd and take out a large group of them. It can also help take out things like spore towers and spewers, and with this siege-ready armor passive, I'll have more ammo for the crossbow and I can reload it quickly. Then for my secondary, I chose to go with the crisper to mix things up a bit, because if I'm in a quick pinch and I just swap to my secondary, I can just paint the ground with fire to help keep some of those enemies from getting up in my face. But honestly, with this build, you probably won't end up needing it too much. I only used it in case of an emergency. Then for my grenade, I decided to go with the stun grenade. This is to help stop those large groups from coming at me. I also used it to help deal with chargers by stopping them in their tracks mid-charge. I also use this in tandem with some of my stratagems to just rack in a ton of kills. I just stun a large crowd, throw in an airstrike, and then run for my life. And speaking of stratagems, I chose to go with the Stalwart, 500 kg bomb, cluster bombs, and the AX-AR-23 guard dog. Now, I went with the cluster bombs mainly because I honestly hadn't used them in a while and I felt like they needed some love. When they're fully upgraded, you get to call them in 5 times before they go on cooldown, which is absolutely massive when there's a bug breach or a bug nest and you're trying to trim down some of those numbers. I got some pretty massive kill streaks by dropping these cluster bombs around some of those objectives. And like I said, I would just hit the group with the stun grenade, throw in the cluster bomb, and then just watch the kills rack up. Then as for the 500 kg bomb, this is mainly for the big stuff like Biotitans and Impalers, and the occasional Spore Charger, just because I hate Spore Chargers and I need them to die immediately. The 500 kg bomb is also really good for bug breaches and clearing out large chunks of enemies that are normally clustered up in big bug nests. And then I also would use the 500 kg bomb for closing those big Biotitan holes if you come across them. I'd use both of these airstrikes to help keep me covered when I was doing the objectives, and then I'd manually set them on cooldown so that they would be recharging when I was on the move to the next point of interest. Then I had the AR-23 guard dog with me because it has medium armor penetration, so it does a great job of helping deal with those annoying alpha brood commanders and some of those hive guards with those thicker armors. It also helps out a ton if you run across shriekers too. Being able to stay on the run and not have to worry about shriekers attacking you from behind is a huge help. Then lastly, I chose to go with the Stalwart because honestly, it's just fun to hold down the trigger and spray everything. The Stalwart is good for pushing back a lot of those smaller enemies, and it can take out shriekers with ease. So if you come across a shrieker nest or a shrieker patrol, you can just spray up into the air and just very quickly take them out. You can also reload the Stalwart on the run, which is crucial when you're trying to stay alive and stay on the move, and having the additional magazines from the armor passive is a huge help, especially since you can find ammo boxes boxes all over the place in the city maps, so ammo isn't really much of a problem with this build. And honestly, you could probably save yourself a stratagem slot and just run into the city, and odds are you're going to find some sort of support weapon just lying around on the ground. I've done that a couple of different times with some of my loadouts. I'll just make the entire build based on the fact that I know I'm going to find a support weapon just lying on the ground. And then lastly, I chose the experimental infusion booster so that every time I stim, I'll run faster and take less damage if I do end up getting hit. And that quick burst of speed is a lifesaver when you're wearing light armor, because if you get hit, you're going to take a crap ton of damage and probably die in just 1 or 2 hits. And being able to make a quick escape is going to save your life time and time again. So that does it for the first build. I had a ton of fun with this build, and I think you will too. So next up, I couldn't make a video going over Terminid loadouts without one focused on fire. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the things I love the most about facing the Terminids is just catching them on fire. And with this build, I decided to go with medium armor this time because sometimes it's better to just stand and fight instead of always running away, and medium armor kind of gives us a good balance of speed and armor. And obviously, I went with the inflammable armor passive to get that 75% damage resistance to fire, since there's going to be a lot of it. For the primary weapon, I chose the FLAM-66 Torture, which is the primary flamethrower. This is so I didn't have to bring the support weapon version of the flamethrower, and it would open up a stratagem slot. For my secondary, I went with the new GP31 Ultimatum. This is to help deal with chargers, impalers, biotitans, and the occasional bug hole, shrieker nest, or spore spewer. Then I went with the regular incendiary grenades, since they have a higher base damage over the impact incendiary grenades. I would normally use these to cut off areas or just throw them directly into bug holes. Then for stratagems, I chose the orbital napalm barrage. This is to shut down entire areas like the bug nests, or when certain objectives would just get completely overran, I would just nuke the entire area and get the hell out of there and then come back later. Sometimes I even threw them into shrieker nests because the barrage would take out the entire nest without me having to go through the hassle of setting up a hell bomb. Then I went with the flame sentry to help take out a lot of those smaller enemies and provide me with some cover fire while I was doing the objectives. And honestly, these things kept getting killed by chargers and impalers, but that isn't exactly a bad thing. Sometimes when I was trying to capture an objective, I would throw the flame sentry sort of away from the objective because I knew all those chargers and impaler tentacles would go after it. So while it was spewing out fire and taking the aggro away from me, it would buy me just enough time to complete the mission objectives, so the flame sentry did a lot better than you would expect. Next, I went with the Guard Dog Rover because it has pretty much unlimited ammo, it catches enemies on fire, and it helps keep a lot of those enemies off my back, especially those annoying shriekers. Then lastly, I chose the Eagle Napalm Strike for a quick burst of fire to help deal with the bug breaches, objectives, and clearing out bug nests. And as for the booster, I chose the Vitality Enhancement Booster because it helps with negating some of that fire damage that you're going to be taking a lot of. And then if you want to make this build even better, definitely keep an eye out for the Flamethrower support weapon that would normally spawn on these city maps just anywhere on the ground. I ended up picking up a Flamethrower and carried it for most of my playthrough. So this is my version of a fire build. Obviously, there's a bunch of different options you can choose from, like the cookout or the breaker incendiary, or even the incendiary mines. I've seen some people play with those. Those are pretty good too. And those are all good options as well, but in my testing, this is the loadout I decided to go with, and this is what I found success with on Helldive 10. The next loadout on the list is probably my personal favorite, and it's the gas build. With all the buffs they gave to gas a couple of updates ago, gas, in my opinion, can make for some of the most chaotic matches where you get tons and tons of kills. So first up, I went with medium armor and the advanced filtration passive to give me that 80% resistance to gas damage, since we're going to be standing in our gas constantly. For the primary weapon, I decided to go with the cookout. This is to help push back and stagger a lot of those enemies trying to get up in my face. Plus, the combination of gas and fire will really make quick work of most of the Terminids. Then I went with the grenade pistol, mainly for just closing bug holes. Anytime I was on the move and I came across a bug nest, just quickly pop a few grenades into the bug holes while gas is confusing all the enemies, and that made for quick work of those bug nests. And then obviously I picked the gas grenades because we're going to be throwing down a ton of these around ourselves and the objectives just constantly. And then, of course, I went with the Orbital Gas Strike since it's one of the best stratagems in the game. It can close bug holes, it does a lot of direct damage to whatever it lands on, and it has a quick cooldown time of a little over just 1 minute. So you can call this thing in often, and it will completely shut down an entire area outside of just Impalers and Bile Titans. And the Orbital Gas Strike is what helped me with completing most of the major objectives. Just throw the Gas Strike directly on the objective, you're pretty much protected from the gas from your armor. Meanwhile, all the Terminids are just running around like crazy and they aren't really focused on you. The next stratagem I chose was the Tesla Tower because someone pointed out to me when I was streaming that gas and Tesla towers are a pretty good combination. Now, normally, enemies are attracted to the towers and head straight to the tower, and they normally can take it out pretty easily with just sheer numbers. But if you have gas everywhere, all the Terminids will get confused and will no longer focus on the tower, and then the Tesla Tower will just melt right through all of them. The gas really helps out with taking out those annoying chargers too. Chargers love to target sentries and Tesla towers, so if you're throwing down gas to confuse the chargers, they're not going to immediately blow up the tower right away, which is really nice. And the Tesla Tower can help take away some of that aggro away from the main objective. You obviously have to be careful though that you don't get too close to the Tesla Tower and accidentally take yourself out. Just remember to blow up the tower once the area is clear, that way you don't accidentally kill yourself. Then I brought along the new and improved Guard Dog Dog Breath because it got reworked so that it only targets enemies that aren't currently affected by gas. So between your gas strikes, your gas grenades, and this Dog Breath, you should have most of the enemies always in a state of confusion and choking. And if an enemy doesn't have gas on them, then this Guard Dog will quickly change that. Now, unfortunately, gas doesn't work on big enemies like Impalers or Bile Titans, so we need to bring something to deal with those guys, so that's where the Quasar Cannon comes in. The Quasar has unlimited ammo and will normally 1 to 2 shot both Bile Titans and Impalers if you shoot them in the face, so I found that bringing the Quasar Cannon was a good way to deal with those guys while everyone else was too busy choking. The Quasar is also really good at taking out chargers too, and on Helldive 10, you're going to be seeing a lot of chargers. Then lastly, for the booster, I went with the Vitality booster to just help take additional damage and to help negate some of the gas since we're going to be standing in it all the time. And I want to point out that I made sure to call in a resupply at every major objective so that I could just spam grenades everywhere. Then once I ran out of grenades, I would pick up an ammo box, throw down more grenades, and then by the time I ran out of the resupply and I burnt through all the grenades, the Orbital Gas Strike would be off cooldown, and then I would just call in another Orbital Gas Strike, it would cover the entire area, and then I would be able to complete the objective. So the main point of this build is to just paint the entire objective with as much gas as possible so that the enemies will leave you alone. Sometimes I like to bring a resupply backpack with these gas builds to give myself even more gas and more stims. But this loadout is always a blast against both the Terminids and the Illuminate, and I think you're going to like it. Now, if you play with a full squad though, they might not be big fans of this loadout unless you can convince them to do the same, in which case, if you can convince your whole squad to go with the gas build, level 10 will just be a breeze. Now for the final build in today's video, I'm going to be honest, I was just experimenting one day and I kind of just threw this build together without much thought, and I ended up being pleasantly surprised. And this is my run and gun loadout. So first up, I went with the Recon Light Armor. This is because it's one of the fastest armors in the game, and it makes us a little bit harder to get detected by the enemies when we're trying to complete objectives and we're running around the map. For the primary weapon, I chose the Breaker Incendiary. This is to help out with those smaller Terminids, the bug breaches, but mainly the Shriekers. I found that the Breaker Incendiary is a great anti-Shrieker weapon. As for my secondary, I picked the Grenade Pistol to help out with bug holes, but honestly, you can kind of choose whatever you want here. I'd recommend the secondary Laser Pistol since we're going to be bringing the Grenade Launcher stratagem, so we don't really need to have 2 grenade launchers, but I still got some use out of the Grenade Pistol, so it's always a good choice. Then obviously we're going to be using the Grenade Launcher support weapon. It's a great anti-Terminid weapon. It is good at blowing up spewers, large groups of enemies, and it's great for bug nests. We're going to be combining the Grenade Launcher with the Supply Backpack. That way we can just burn through as many grenades and stims as we want. Then I chose the Orbital Napalm Barrage for the same reason as our previous loadout. This is to clear out bug nests, clear out objectives, and sometimes deal with those Shrieker nests. and honestly, I just bring this to watch the kill streak number climb up because it's just fun to get a ton of kills. Then I pick the Rail Cannon Strike to quickly deal with the Bile Titans and Impalers that I can't outrun. Then we pick the Experimental Infusion Booster so that we go even faster and take less damage every time we stim. So using the Experimental Infusion Booster in combination with the Supply Backpack to give us more stims means we can outrun most of the enemies that we encounter. Now, I've seen some people use this combo with the Light Medic Armor to give yourself more total stims, which also works too, but I just used Recon Armor because I like to run fast. And that's pretty much it for this build. It's very simple. The whole point of this is that you want to try to be sneaky when you're capturing objectives without the Terminids noticing you, since you're harder to detect with your Recon Armor. And then when they do notice you, you want to stay on the move, stay out of reach, and just spam fire your grenades, and then pop a stim whenever they get close to you. That way you don't take as much damage, and you can quickly run away. And I found this build to be surprisingly pretty good, and it was an interesting way to switch up my normal playstyle. And that is going to do it for today's video. I had success with all 4 of these loadouts when solo helldiving on Super Helldive 10 difficulty. So try them out for yourselves, let me know what you think, and let me know what your favorite Terminid loadout is down in the comment section down below. That way you can help each other out in the community, and so that I can try out your loadouts for myself, because I'm always on the lookout to try something new that I didn't previously think of. So if you're new here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. That way you don't miss out on any future videos. And that is going to do it for me, guys. And I will talk to you all next time.